Shields up, Ironbreakers. We're kind of here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Remnant from the Ashes. This title was sent to me by Gunfire Games so that I could give it a look and tell you guys my opinions on it. This is my second video talking about this game. So a couple of days ago, I did my first impressions video telling you how I felt about the game after about 8 hours or so. Since then, I've been playing it a lot more. I've been live streaming it pretty much every day, and I'm still having a blast with it. Earlier today, I actually finished the game. After that, I went into a friend's save file so that I could experience some of the different events that I didn't experience in my own playthrough, because this is a procedurally generated game. As such, you're not going to be able to see everything the game has on offer on your very first playthrough of it. And in order for you to actually see some of the other events that you might have missed on, you can either reset your world or go into the world of a friend to see some of those different events. And depending on the stuff that you unlock, it is also going to affect the gear that you unlock, the weapons that you unlock. And, you know, it is pretty cool in terms of replayability, because, you know, it gives you a motivation to like, hey, I should reset my world, go through the campaign again, and maybe I'll get different bosses at different spots in the game, which you will. Or maybe I'll get different world events at different points in the game, which most likely you will as well. And that, again, gives you more reason to go back and play some more and work on your builds and upgrade your gear a little bit more, and so on and so forth. And from that aspect of it, it has been fantastic. Now, I also have some criticism that I want to bring towards Remnant from the Ashes in regards to a couple of things that annoyed me with the game. Now, it is important to preface this by saying that overall, my experience with Remnant from the Ashes has been overwhelmingly positive. As in, I will recommend this game to anyone that you see the gameplay and this looks like it's something that you might be into. Go right ahead, try it out, because I highly doubt that you're going to regret it. This game mixes some of my favorite games. It is a third-person co-op shooter that brings in elements from Diablo 2 in its procedural generation, and at the same time also brings a lot of soul stuff into the mix that I personally like, as well as even a lot of references that I found in regards to some of the bosses that you fight. Some of them do seem inspired by Souls bosses, which I appreciated, but they take their own spin with it. And I think overall, just like the experience with the game has been really, really good for me. I've really, really enjoyed it. Now, one of the criticisms that I gave it back when I did my first impressions was the art style. I felt that the art style was a little bit bland, but at this point, I'd only experienced 2 of the tile sets of the game. I mean, more than 2 of the tile sets, but I'm talking about 2 of the worlds, so to speak. You're going to go through about 4 worlds plus this labyrinth-looking location as you play through the game. And at the time that I did my first impressions video, I had been through Earth and Rom, which had a very, let's call it pastel color scheme to those levels. And I wanted to see something a little bit more vibrant, and I just thought that the game wasn't going to have that because of what I had seen up until that point. However, as you advance in the game and you go into the other worlds, the art style definitely evolves. You go into the swampland that's got a lot of lush greens, and then you go into this forest that's got a lot of like blue lighting and stuff like that. And it really does get to those points with those really vibrant colors that I personally like, which I did not expect. I didn't see that coming at all, and it was a really positive surprise for me personally because of the art styles that I enjoy. And it also builds a contrast from like when you begin the game and you begin in this very pastel looking thing, lots of grays and browns with the occasional red, and then you go into this desert looking area which splashes in a couple of yellows but still very kind of like foggy and stuff like that, right? And then when you go into the swamp and stuff really starts to become more colorful, and eventually when you finally go into one of the final worlds, which is like in the forest, then things really get really cool looking. And basically that's just to say that the game evolves its art style. It's like, it seems like it's an artistic direction to kind of end on a climax, and that was very surprising for me, and it was something that I really liked from a visual standpoint. In terms of the sounds, I don't have a lot to add in regards to my first impressions video. Pretty much the sounds are good. The music is good. I wish there was more music, but I understand why there's not. again, not a really whole lot to add there. And in terms of gameplay, one of the things that I would like to bring up is the whole thing of you getting different loot based around on the way that you kill certain bosses. Like, that was something that, I'm not sure if I mentioned it in my first impressions video. Maybe I might have, but I don't think I was really aware of just how prevalent it was throughout the entire game. And that was really cool, and it really made me want to go back and do a lot of the bosses that I had already done to get different weapons out of them. So to give you an idea, one of the bosses that I killed was the one who gave me a shotgun that I pretty much used that shotgun throughout the entirety of the game. It was a one-shot shotgun. You had to shoot it and then reload it immediately. I believe I mentioned that in my previous video. And had I killed that boss in a different way, I could have gotten a melee weapon, a hammer, which I actually want to go back and get that hammer now that I've finished the game, because I want that to be kind of like my main melee weapon. But that was just a very simple example. There's another boss that gives you like a really cool rifle, or maybe if you kill him in a different way, he actually gives you a different hammer. There's another one that gives you a special weapon, and if you kill it in a certain way, instead of that weapon, you can get like a melee weapon, or if you do a certain quest, you can get something different. There's a lot of basically variety in terms of how you go about acquiring your items. There's also characters that will die depending on some of the things that you do. And because of that, because of all of those decisions that you are making, I mean, in your first playthrough, you're not really making decisions. You're just trying to like kill these monsters, because depending on whether or not you look stuff up, which you guys know that I don't, you won't even know that these side things kind of happen. But because of people telling me as I was killing these bosses, like, oh, if you had done it this way, you could have gotten this other thing, I was thinking like, oh, so maybe this has like an impact in terms of the storytelling of the game itself, right? I started thinking about it on a completely different level. So at one point, there's a character in the game that asks me to make a specific decision. They ask me to get something, but me getting that something is going to mean doing something really bad for somebody else. And when I got to that point, I was like, well, I don't want to do that. And I thought that potentially that decision would have actually had like an impact on the ending of the game, and it doesn't. It really doesn't. So basically, I kind of gimped myself through a large portion of the game, because the levels themselves, right, they're made in a way that you go through the game, and then it's like, oh, here's a boss fight, and you go through the game, and here's a boss fight, and you keep going, and there's another boss fight further ahead, right? And there was this one boss, because of something that these characters were telling me, that I didn't want it to kill, because I thought this is going to have like really negative impact in the story of the game. It doesn't. So if you ever get to that same point that I did, don't worry about it. Just kill everything. Don't worry too much about it, really. But that was something that I really was hoping was going to have like a payoff when I finished the game, and it didn't. And that was a little bit disappointing, right? Because I did the whole game with this thing in the back of my mind, like, I'm not going to screw over this planet, so to speak, right? I'm not going to screw them over. I'm not going to kill this thing. And eventually, there was no payoff for that. That was just like, oh, really? And then another criticism that I have is the final boss. And this is something that I've seen in plenty of games before, which is usually when you have the final boss and everybody wants to make the final boss like a more memorable experience, so they swap things up, right? They try to make a really thoughtful fight that requires specific tactics and stuff like that. And I think that's cool. I think that's great. The problem that I have with that is, for starters, I'm going to be going a little bit in depth here in regards to the tactics that you need to apply to the final boss. If you don't want to hear about that, you can click away if you think that's spoilers or whatever. But I'm not going to go into like the story implications of the boss. So I'm not going to get into story spoilers or anything like that, right? But I do need to talk about the tactics for this boss because of a problem that I kind of have with the way the boss is designed, specifically in consoles. Because this problem is not as prevalent from the PC side of things if you are using a keyboard and a mouse. So again, I'm going to be getting into specific tactics for this boss. So the final boss of this game is a boss that has 2 phases. And the first phase is fairly easy. It just requires you to do a bunch of headshots on him, and he should go down fairly fast. He's got some really powerful attacks, but they're somewhat easy to dodge. And then in the second phase, he powers up and things get a little bit more complicated. Now, I want to start by talking about that first phase in regards to the consoles, because here's the thing. This game does not have a whole lot of aim assist. Now, it's got this thing called aim snap, which I'm not exactly sure what it does. It seems to sometimes track the targets that I'm aiming for and help me kind of line up the shots that way, but it doesn't work most of the time. At least that's my experience on the PlayStation 4. If you have a different experience with aim snap, please let me know in the comment section. But both me and my friend were playing on PlayStation 4, and we both felt the same way. The people that were watching the stream also were like, wow, the game has no aim assist whatsoever. So most people felt that way. Most people that were watching me play the game, at least. But let me know if your experience is different. But basically what happens is, in that first phase, the way to basically get through that first phase and keep as much of your consumables as possible to go into the second phase, which is the actual hard phase. So like you can still have your dragon hearts to heal up and all of that stuff. The way to effectively get through that first phase is to shoot the boss in the head. And the problem is, if you don't have decent aim assist on a controller and the boss is basically flying around and darting through the map and stuff, it can get pretty challenging for you to shoot this boss in the head, right? So that was problem number one. Just getting through that first phase will usually consume a lot more of your consumables than doing so on PC, because on PC you just pick up your mouse, plop, shoot him in the head. Not a problem at all. Most people that were in my live stream, they have played the game on PC and they were like, wow, this is like mega easy mouse and keyboard. Just aim right at the head, boom, shoot it, dead. With controller, that becomes a bit of a problem. So getting through that first phase is a bit of an issue. The other thing is, it feels like the boss's hitbox is a little bit wonky. Like, I'm talking stick figures levels. Sometimes I would totally have a shot, and it wouldn't be a headshot, fine. It would be a body shot, and I would shoot, and I know that it's like dead on, and it would just not impact. It would just not deal damage on the boss. That was extremely frustrating. But then, when you actually get to the second part of the fight, so what happens in the second part is, for starters, you can't shoot at the boss at the very beginning of the second part because you're not going to deal any damage. Just think of like the boss has like this mega shield. Well, it's not really a mega shield. The boss just has too much hit points for you to actually deal damage to. So like if you were trying to kill the boss straight up, I would say it's damn near impossible. I mean, I guess you can do it, but it would take you like 10 hours or so to actually grind down all the health points that boss has. So it has a mechanic where after a while the boss sends you to this dark area and adds spawn in that area, and you're going to take damage while you're down there. So the way that works is there's a portal that spawns up after you kill the first ad. However, you don't want to leave instantly. You have to kill a bunch of ads, because for every ad that you kill, you're going to get a stacking damage buff. And naturally, you want to get as much as you can before you actually exit out. Then after you exit out of that portal, you want to basically pump as much damage as you possibly can into the boss. And eventually, if you reach a certain damage threshold, then the boss is going to stagger, at which point he's going to open up and you're going to be able to deal a ton of damage to the boss. Everybody will be able to deal damage to the boss, not just the person that was in the dark area. So what is the problem that I personally have with this? Well, for starters, that shotgun that I've been using throughout the entirety of the game, the shotgun that I've used on literally every single encounter in this game, the shotgun that I've been upgrading all the way up until that boss, it sucks. It's really bad for that specific boss fight, like to the point where it's a serious problem to try and do that fight with that one weapon. And it's like, I understand that, you know, sometimes you gotta get out there and you gotta change stuff around. So that's why you have a sidearm. The sidearm that I had, which was the Magnum revolver, also not that great for that particular fight, particularly without a little bit of aim assist to help you line up headshots. Not the best weapon to have in that fight either. So you're talking about two whole weapons that I've been upgrading to hell and back throughout the entirety of the game, like pumping all of the resources that I can into these weapons. Useless. I mean, not entirely useless. I guess maybe if you really put a lot of extra effort into it, you might be able to make it work. I wasn't able to make it work. So then I upgraded another weapon from scratch, a weapon that I hated, but basically a fast-firing weapon. And after I upgraded that weapon, I went into that fight again. And then I realized that not only you need to get through all of these phases and do everything just about right, you need to get at least 10 stacks to really be able to reliably break through that damage threshold. You need to get 10 stacks of the debuff, which is not easy. Is not easy if you're not practiced with certain weapons and all of that stuff. And I'm not going to lie, it took me quite a bit to actually adapt and be able to reliably perform some decent damage on that boss. And that was very frustrating, just like you add all of those things together, and I really didn't like that last boss fight. I feel like it could definitely be better balanced, particularly if you're in the consoles, and maybe even balance it in a way that like it becomes somewhat viable to use other weapons in there rather than just fast-firing weapons. Because like even if you go on YouTube right now, and you look up guides for that boss fight, everybody's going to tell you use fast-firing weapons. Use fast-firing weapons. Because fast-firing weapons are apparently going to take the most advantage out of that stacking debuff. And yeah, basically when I put out my beam rifle, like, I nailed that boss. I was doing tons and tons of damage to him. But I basically had to change my whole build around for that one boss fight, which is not really something that I like. But that's probably my biggest piece of criticism with the game, because other than that, is like my opinion remains like this is a really great game. It was a really great surprise, and I'm going to get back in there, and I just hope they patch that boss a little bit just to make it a little bit better to use different playstyles on and whatnot, and not just feel like, no, you just grab the beam rifle, beam him down, like, especially now that I have like a new shotgun and stuff that I got from the final boss, and I got all of these different things that I'm working on. Respecking in the game is actually fairly easy after you finish it. It costs you about 2,500 scrap, and you're able to just respec whenever you want, which is cool. So basically the game kind of opens up after you finish the last boss. If you're the type of person that really likes running and specifying on a build and really trying to squeeze as much damage out of it as possible. They're also adding adventure mode. They're trying to add that as soon as possible. I don't know the exact dates when that stuff is coming, but basically you're going to be able to re-roll not just your whole save, but you're going to be able to re-roll on a per world basis so that you can experience different events that only happen in some of these worlds in the game. So I think that is going to basically spur a little bit more life into the game, but ultimately I just want more events. I want more stuff so that I can play around and do different builds and stuff like that. And yeah, overall still overwhelmingly positive, but I wanted to kind of update you guys on the whole art style thing and the final boss thing that I got into. Like, I even tweeted, like, man, this boss is absolute garbage, which in a way is still kind of how I feel in regards to the consoles. But let me know what you guys think about it, because, again, it could just be one man's opinion. A lot of people were talking to me about that boss. Some of them didn't have any trouble with it. I had a lot of trouble with it. Sometimes it happens. Some bosses are just not for you, But I still feel like there could be something done there. But, again, ultimately still a fantastic game, and I can't wait to play some more of it. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, hit it up with a like. If you did not enjoy, hit it up with a dislike. Rating the video really, really, really helps me out because it rates it higher in the search rankings and all that stuff, as opposed to just burying it like it does pretty much every video that I put out nowadays. And yeah, again, thank you all very much for watching. Subscribe if you want to keep up to date with all of my content. Hit the bell notification icon, comments and feedback, all of that good stuff. Stay strong, and may your shields never break.
Which one next?